Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Chris.
I'm Swizz.
And thank you for joining us. This is our team-by-team analysis series. It is North Melbourne. The Blue Baggers. Is it the Blue Baggers? What are they called?
No, it's definitely not the Blue Baggers.
The Kangaroos, mate.
Kangaroos, yeah, basically is
So irrelevant, he called them a different
the
name.
the shin boners.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
something's getting boned. And
Look, you've really just thrown a massive spanner.
all five North Melbourne supporters, which I know all five of them just tuned out.
They are a growing side. Hashtag sorry Damien Gunn, Blue Baggers, shin boners. And look, they are very, very, very Supercoach relevant this year, guys. So it will be an interesting session. Outside of Chris's Z-Ball chat, but it has value. Starting to get swung. It has value, and there's something to go there. But before we move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. All the audio platforms as well, so Spotify, Soundcloud, Stitcher, you name it. And on the YouTube, Chris?
Yeah, just search for Supercoach Insider. Just going really, really well, and catch up on our most recent team pods where we discuss where our team's looking going into round one.
You mean you and I?
Obviously we're missing a Swiss. Missing a Swiss there. A Swiss he rates other people's teams, but just not his own.
My team's already winning the 50K, so I don't need to put it out there.
And that's why you're not sharing, mate. A lot of people comment in and they write in, they send an email and they say the three of us together are a tight unit where we're like the Swiss Army knife, except you're not delivering. We're the Swiss Army knife, except you're not delivering, my man, and you need to get your team up on the line so people can check it out.
Can't be a Swiss Army knife without the Swiss, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to be Swiss cheesy, but get your shit out there. So North Melbourne are definitely very, very relevant, and to lead us into this discussion, Swizz, you're going to talk about ins, outs, and their fixture, and then we've got a lot of relevant players, particularly the cheap end, because nothing says cheap like North Melbourne. Joking. I'm joking. That's our one joke. One joke. I am really excited for them. I think I own a few.
We get one each, right? Is it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that's Swizz done. That's me done. Chris has one up his sleeve. Oh, your joke, Zeeble. You're done as well. So Swizz, hit us up.
Okay. Well, when they're not winning the spoon, didn't they? Finished 18th.
Way to sell it. You sound as enthusiastic as Chris.
I've done so much research.
It's like, just search for us on YouTube, Supercoach Insider. It's going all right. Like, you act enthused.
All right, so they did. They finished 18th, as we know. They only won the 2 games of the season. Unfortunately, one of them was against Richmond when they changed the coach, and the other one was West Coast. Both the worst attack and defence in the league. 12 scores of 61 and under, including scores of 24 and 32. 6 scores of 120 kicked against them. Obviously, they're Supercoach relevant because it's all about that pie. If you're getting smashed in games and that, your team's getting none of that pie. The big questions is, how does Alistair Clarkson change their game plan? Obviously, the GOAT of the coaches comes in. So who's he starting midfield? How does his halfbacks line up? And that's sort of been the discussions around pre-season. And does he give some of those younger guys the first crack, or is it the new recruits? And there's a few of them that we will talk about. So they rank 11th for experience and 13th for age, so not even the youngest team around. Their ins are Blake Jury. A lot of talk about him from the rookie
Jury's
draft.
out.
Sorry?
Jury's out.
Jury's out. Yep. Hamish Free, also from the rookie draft.
Likes to let it hang. Sorry.
Braden George, number 26 pick. What a great number. Cooper
Two first
Harvey,
names.
56, the father-son of absolutely the GOAT. Daniel Howell, rookie draft. And then these big ones. You got George Wardlaw, who was the number 4 pick. Harry Sheasel, the number 3 pick. So Wardlaw is the gun inside midfielder. Just had a couple of, I think, hamstring concerns that last year, which probably pushed him back from being, well, obviously Ashcroft was the number 1 guy, but the clear number 2, and it was probably level with Ashcroft at times last year. Sheasel's more that, well, I don't want to say Wingard type, but yeah, that exciting. Let's go more Petrarca type, that half forward who's going to really, impact games. From there, I don't think he's going to be ever like a pure midfielder, but yeah, he's going to be that kind of hybrid type. for his career. They've also brought in the two Freo boys in Griffin Logue and Darcy Tucker through trades, and one of Clarko's favourites in Liam Shields. So they're out. They've lost Jed Anderson, one of Clarko's not favourite boys, and that's gone up to the Gold Coast. At 2, Buscavolani, I think that's it. He's got delisted. Kyron Hayden also delisted. Tom Lynch, the Adelaide version, he has retired, but he was more there on a coaching role. Matt McGuinness delisted. Jared Pollock finally delisted.
Early, delisted early, paid off out, to never play again.
Take your $800,000, get out this club now.
How bad do you have to be for a team to go, you know what, we'll just pay you your money and get out? Like
it's the Moneyball scene, and that they're paying you $3.5 million to play against us.
Yeah, exactly. That's how much they think of you. What a fall from grace, though, for a guy who went, I'm going to Port Adelaide to go home, and then oh no, I'm not going there. I'm chasing, and fair enough. He chased the money, and that's probably the only money he was getting. Yeah, I love.
They also had Dan Howe join them, obviously through SPP. So I'm not sure.
I did say Dan Howe in there. I'm sure I said it.
I said Howler. Howler.
Yeah. Oh hell yeah. Whatever. Josh Walker also out. Patrick Walker so delisted, and then the massive trade: Jason Horne-Francis back to Port Adelaide. So that's
nice.
a lot of ins, a lot of outs there, some big names on that. So it'd be interesting to see, especially from a Supercoach perspective, how much impact some of these guys have. Their fixture, naturally, it's going to be a little bit soft. They play the Bombers, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, St Kilda, West Coast all twice, but also have the D, so naturally a tough one there. First 4 is West Coast home, Freo away, Hawthorn away, and then Carlton at home. Last 3, the Bombers, Richmond and Gold Coast. They've got the round 15 bye. 18th hardest, which would be the easiest draw out there. So that's a bit of a rundown of North Melbourne. Straight into those premiums, and they've got 2, but one in particular, and that's LDU. And he's obviously been a big talking point for people this year because he's in that bracket, as we've talked about already, Tom Green, Tom Mitchell, and Noah Anderson. So he's the 4th of the quads there. Chris and I were talking about during the Gold Coast summary when we were talking about Anderson. I have Anderson ahead of LDU. I think Chris had LDU ahead of Anderson, but I think they're 3 and 4 in that pecking order behind Tom Green and Tom Mitchell for most people. Still very light, obviously. The way he was kind of finishing last year, I just had some question marks about how Clarko is going to sort of play and set up his game outside of Tom Mitchell. Never really had those Supercoach relevant gun midfielders. So I've always talked about, your Sam Mitchells and your Luke Hodges, your Cyrils, all the guys I've sort of ran through there when Hawthorn were flying, they were never, the massive 120 guys. Players that can run both ways, play as a team and that. So that's a bit of my worry about him coming in. But he is in 7% of sides. So if you boys, what do you think about the LDU?
Well, I hate to be the guy that just keeps bringing up CBAs, but I mean, it's kind of
who gave you access? Who gave you access?
So he actually was their second biggest midfielder for CBAs behind Jai Simpkin, who had 84%. But in the first part of the year, he went 65%, 14, 52, 67, 52, 60. He had one game of 93, then 65, 74, 46, 58. And then they had the bye. And then after the bye, what we know is he averaged 110 post-bye. So this is where he picked up his averages. He started the round post-bye 85, 89, 83, 83, 85, 78, 80, 71, 86, 84. So it's completely linked to his role. So my biggest gripe with that is they're having all of these guys that apparently are all playing midfield now. So they've got the 17 midfielders, don't they? So Ben Cunnington's come back and he said he's going to slot straight in alongside Jai Simpkin, the now captain, and of course LDU as their main 3. I do believe that. I do believe that is kind of their big 3 in the midfield. But you also have Tom Power pushing back in. You've got Will Phillips, of course, who's back on the radar, and he seems to be the guy that is going to be in there taking some You've also got obviously Wardlaw that wants to get some CBAs. Sheasel will get some at some point. There is quite a lot of
Hugh McDonald as well can run through.
Yeah, you've also got Zerha.
Hugh Greenwood. Sorry,
Hugh Greenwood. Yeah, Hugh McDonald. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know
Zerha's obviously was doing that too. In the trial game just gone. So where exactly does that leave him in terms of CBAs? Because that screams to me, if he's not getting above 80% CBAs, then he's not going to be a valid Supercoach scorer. So do you guys, and this is a question, do you guys think that that is going to be sustainable for him this year? Is he going to be able to get, with all of those guys coming back in, 80% CBAs guaranteed week in, week out?
No.
I think the other issue is that he only had 4 scores over 125, which kind of links in. And I know it's not a huge factor because he only had the good role for the back end of the year, and he did average 110. But when you look at the top 8 to 10 midfielders, a lot of them have scope. Like, they can hurt you. They can go absolutely big. And maybe we just haven't seen it yet. So it could be there. We just haven't seen it. I'm just probably, hesitant, I guess, as to whether I would probably, start him, to be honest. I like him as a pick. I really do. But for me,
I like him as a pick
70
because
70 to 80%.
It's a pick that I would, in traditionally past, I'd go, I want that guy because he's in super low pod. And I just want him because I want him to work out just for me, for my stupid ego. That's the sort of pick that is for me. Whereas when I look at the facts and the figures and I look at it practically and I go, actually, maybe it's not all there. And I still think he goes all right. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think he approaches the 110 for a season that he's going to need to have at his price to be a M8 keeper. Because that's the borderline. What we saw last year is that there were, I think, 15 players that averaged 110 plus. So it's not even top 10 anymore. It's top 15 to 20 almost. And I don't think that he's going to be in that group. I think he's just slightly below that still. Unless, of course, he gets, 80% for the entire year. There's a big injury in that midfield. Maybe Jai Simpkin if Jai Simpkin was to go down with an injury, all of a sudden he's the number one midfielder. But right now, as of last year, Simpkin was actually leading the CBAs. So by a long shot, by an absolute mile, especially early in that season and even late, Simpkin was still 90%. Yeah, it's so.
It's funny you talk about that pod thing, though, because I get that whole pod feeling on ego and the rest of it. And I think Parrish, if there's a guy I'm starting at 3%, and with their early draw and especially when it gets around 10 onwards as well, that's where the ego comes in. Because I'm like, well, you're passing on someone who might have higher ownership and scope for a guy you kind of think, hey, this guy could really tear up, and just go that option. Just because your gut feel kind of says, hey, they could probably do well. Sometimes you need to.
Same reason why I want to start Kelly, just to piss you off and boost my ego.
Hey, I implore anyone to start. I implore anyone to start Josh Kelly. And the worst part was I didn't just cop it on the GWS pod, which I apologize about my audio, settings mistake. But also Dr. Supercoach and their Slack and stuff. People start talking about, is Josh Kelly an option? I'm like, no. Like, what's going on? Copying it from everywhere. So I was like, hey, everyone start through. I think even Supercoach Mama was getting on there saying, Josh Kelly teases everyone every year, and some people are like, he can't be discredited. And I'm like, why am I in this conversation? So, everyone has those players.
So I suppose, are we all three in agreement? Then he's just really unlikely, but good on him if he does, but it's not someone that we're banking on as a starting selection.
No.
Yeah. Draft, I'd take him at overs, 105. I think if you go halfway between 100 and 110, I think there's a little bit of scope each way.
I think at 105, he's going to be all right. Yeah. And he'll have those games where he'll win a game for you. He's going to have absolutely big games. But I just don't think there's not really I don't see that he's not crying out as a selection. North aren't getting any better anytime soon. They're not an absolute going to win 10 games this year, are they? I mean, well, maybe, no, Clarko would have to pull an absolute miracle to turn their list around in 3 months. But yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a no-go zone.
Yep. No,
sounds good. Who's the next primo?
Well, we've got to discuss him and that, even though just because of his price and that. But Aaron Hall, 538. Yep. I'll let you guys discuss this one because I've actually had questions about him and that, and people ask, could I potentially start Hall? And I'm just like, no, you just
No, he's
can't.
been injured.
He's been injured again, and that
Yeah.
the problem is if he. The question I think on people's lips are if he lines up round one and he's playing in that role that seagull role that he plays, where it's Zeeble intercept marks, handballs the Hall butchers it, gets the ball back, kicks it to someone, butchers it again, and gets 3 possessions in the space of 30 seconds. We saw that game where he even got injured last year against the Dogs. I think he scored 70 at halftime, just ridiculous scorer. So we know if he's on the park, he can potentially go 120. That's how long he can stay in the park, and it might only be 2 weeks. It could be 12. Like that's from my view.
I made a joke earlier today, which actually could be true, by the way. Is like I was like, who's taking the kick-ins? Zeeble should be the one taking kick-ins because Aaron Hall's one long kick away from doing another hammy, and that's absolutely true because I saw him take a kick in and literally bust a hammy, and he kicked it long and went, oh, maybe I put a little bit too much into that. That is how, like on a knife's edge, his hamstrings are. In that if he extends it from kicking a football too much, he will do another hammy and he's out. So yeah, it's just he's a flight risk. Absolutely. I don't think you can start him at all.
I had a great question over the weekend. We've come from one of our cricket guys. Where do you take him in draft?
Oh,
it's the ultimate question.
I hate it.
I'm not getting him at true value.
I'm letting someone else take him for sure.
I'll let someone else take him at that average.
There's enough good defenders. I don't need to take him.
Yeah, that's my problem. I look at defenders around there and go, I just take him. But someone is, and the problem is they're either getting. You're going to end up being that's going to be the week you play them, and Hall's going to play and go 140.
He's going to go 140.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding? But I thought there was an awesome question. It might have been 40 that asked me that. It was just brilliant. And even what to do with him in a keeper league and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, for just a normal draft, great.
So in regards to kick-ins, in regards to Aaron Hall, he only took 60 last year, but you have to say that that's probably because he was injured for a lot of the other games. The actual club leader was Luke McDonald on 75, and then Aidan Call with 60, who equals Hall. But then you also have Stevenson, who's not playing in defence. He had 38 last year. Lockie Young, who's probably not best 22, at 18. Bailey Scott, he's probably not playing down there anymore. Zeeble actually popped in for 14 last year. I don't even know. I don't remember those games.
Clearly hadn't touched the ball, and he's just ran down and gone, give me the
ball,
boys.
While I'm down here, boys. Just let me show you how it's done, all right?
It actually is. The shirt's perfect. It's genuinely the seagulls on that because these guys just seagull kickouts from each other. Like, I haven't touched the ball in a while. Like, give me the ball.
Absolutely. Like, he's playing half forward, but they're so far pushed into their defense that they're just like, oh, well, I'm down here, mate. It's all good. I'll take a few. And look, I'm not sure. I don't remember him playing like basically anything behind the ball last year, but yeah, he had 14. So I suppose that should we discuss Zeeble?
I'm going to go into the breakouts and that, and he was second on my list. So let's touch him now.
Right.
And that, the 356K forward, currently it's not actually highly owned at all. I think he's in 2%. So definitely, I know somebody that you want to talk about, Chris. So go ahead, mate. This is yours.
Yeah, well, I think most people who have played Supercoach for more than 12 months would know that 2 years ago, Jack Zeeble was an absolute revelation. And basically every single person had him because he was, what was his starting price? Like 220, 230K?
Yeah, bugger all.
Here.
250.
257.
257, had an absolute blind of a preseason, was mooted to move down back, move down back, and then just played like the most Supercoach friendly role you've ever seen from a defender.
8 weeks, within 8 rounds, he was 599.
Yeah, which was unbelievable. A keeper, averaged 107 for the season, led the kick-ins by a whopping, he had 148 kick-ins, and the next he played on 92% of the time. The next best was Aaron Hall with 96 that year. And then there was a few with like 6 and 5 and etc. So basically, if he wasn't doing it, then Aaron Hall was doing it. And he led by over 50 on Aaron Hall those years. So, new coach comes in and says, actually, you're not a forward. Well, don't get me wrong, you can offer us something there, but we've seen you play your best football. It's as a halfback flanker, which is absolutely true. And said, yep, okay, cool. So Jack Ziebell himself came out in a press conference the other day and said, I'm actually moving back behind the ball. I had a chat with Clarko. Clarko said he wants to see me play behind the ball again. And that's why I've been training all preseason. He's had a fantastic preseason. So the concerns, obviously, that he did that 2 years ago. He was 30 at the time, or 29 turning 30. He's now 31 turning 32 this year. So he's had a couple more years older. He's a little bit more expensive. So instead of being 250K, he's now 350K. But if you have a look, my biggest thing is I have a look at their back 6 or back 7 players, and there really hasn't been too many changing parts. So outside of Logue, so Logue's obviously one that's going to come in. He is a great intercepting defender, but he's going to have to play big in this lineup. So the 3 bigs are going to be Buckets, obviously, Logue, and Core. So those are your 3 defensive bigs. Core can play small and big, and often plays in the big rucks and things like that as well. But I see Logue as basically Robbie Tarrant was playing that exact same role 2 years ago. So it's no change in terms of their structure. And then the 3 other guys, again, it's going to be Aaron Hall, Jack Ziebell, and Luke McDonald. So that's their back 6, in my opinion. I can't see that changing. They do have guys, obviously, on the outer, or guys looking to transition to that halfback line. So think guys like Taron Thomas, who's obviously been rumored to want to be in that mix. We also know that Clarko likes to play a 7th defender, and will play like a Sicily guy behind the ball. Who, in your opinion, out of those 7 guys is more like Sicily than anyone else?
You know what? I think Ziebell's the one, and that there's calls shown that he could do it in that little space at GWS, but
at GWS, yep.
And that, so there is some data around that Core could be, but you're more likely to let Ziebell run around and do whatever he wants, and Core, it could be a matchup situation where teams that have the 3 key forwards, and we talked about, I think with Melbourne, like Core would have to lock down, and then Ziebell becomes more that loose guy. There might be games where they go, okay, no, just because of maybe age or different stuff, we'll let it be Core. But I think Ziebell's more the most likely, and we've seen it. I know you talked about age there, but we've seen guys like Shannon Hearn, for example, still at 35, just able to run around and do whatever they want because nobody's putting time in them.
There's no one on them, it doesn't matter.
And they've got the natural footy IQ. Like Ziebell being like the leader and everything, he knows what positions he needs to run in, knows when to zone off. So he's the most logical person.
They also got the most out of his body probably of his whole career because he played 21 games in the role. So I just seem, we don't yet know, of course, how Clarko is going to approach his game style there. All we can really model off is how it was at Hawthorn, which could be a little bit outdated. So I'm not saying that how he played 3 years ago is going to be the same as how North are going to play now. I think that there will be changes, so that's something to be wary of. But I still think that he will play loose behind the ball. I don't think that that's going to necessarily change at all. How the ball moves may be different. So there may not be like a huge – I remember the Hawks, Brian Lake had, 21 marks or something in a game at one point. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be their sort of real possession style game. If it is, holy crap, we've got D1, we've got F1, at 350K. But I think they will try and switch the ball quite a lot, and they'll be switching through guys that can use the football. For deep kicking, again, he doesn't have the hamstring issues that an Aaron Hall has. So, he's going to be an outlet kick there. Does he take over the kick-ins? Again, is he the one that goes back there and takes that over? Obviously, Luke McDonald had 75 last year, but when the year that Ziebell was back down there, he only took 4 for the entire year.
McDonald was also a midfielder that year, wasn't he? Because then he got DPP last year back into defence because he was a midfielder technically after the same year Ziebell was in defence. So that could have been a slight correlation between the two. Well, because I think Abdul started McDonald and then he went to defence and then he moved him on last year.
So he brought in McDonald because a good scorer, and I think Hall's injury. He was like, well, it's got to be McDonald, isn't it? And then he'll pick up defensive status, and that burnt out.
Hall, McDonald is also one that could probably push up the ground as well. As far as if there's one to kind of be susceptible to be moved as far as a position, it probably, I think, could be McDonald, because you could have a Taron Thomas play a McDonald role.
I think that he's too important down there because they don't have anyone else who can guard smalls.
Okay, fair enough. So if and I think you might be right with, Zeeble possibly with the kickouts if McDonald's not. And it's kind of like Luke Hodge. You have someone who's,
even if he gets
mature enough as a director and say, hey, this is what I want.
Yeah, he doesn't need 140 kickouts.
That was the real start of that quarterback role in the AFL.
Yeah,
it's like having Luke. Well, and he's
often when say Aaron Hall took it, he'd just kick it to Zeeble anyway. So Zeeble doesn't necessarily need all the kickouts to score well, but he had a huge ceiling in that year. I don't, 350K. I don't think there is a better mid-pricer with a better previous scoring profile that you could bank on at all. Like everyone else has a lot of too many question marks.
Okay, so the other thing, and I've put this as, so I've got 3 breakouts. The Zeeble's the main one. The third one.
Oh, can I shit on Zeeble before you move?
Before you do that, I had the third on the list was Taron Thomas, just because I was like, do not pick, because he's going to be off with, well, who knows, with all this personal
what
stuff
is happening with Taron Thomas is the question.
Well, so I can't see him lining up round 1 with everything.
No, neither can I. But they haven't announced anything. They've just said he's taking time from the club. What does that mean?
Yeah,
so is he going to get suspended?
Yeah. Well, I'm gathering so. Like I'm sitting there thinking North are planning with life without Taron Thomas, and that it would be hard for them.
I don't know about that. Same as Clarko took some time off and then came back in and just walked through the door.
Look at John Patton and after he, and then
that one was for leave, and the other one I think was more mental health. I don't think he's leaving for mental health. I think it's kind of like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's real. Take some time off, get your stuff together. As in, you need to change your personal life.
But it depends on how that all plays out too and stuff.
I think it's fine.
Like he might come back at some point, but I can't see him starting the season.
No, probably he might miss the start of the season, or he'll come back and he'll be a little bit out of shape and then have to kind of get into it. But I wouldn't mind him in a draft league.
There's a lot more talk about it down here than I'm sure you guys are getting up there.
So the issue with Zeeble, twofold.
Yeah, we don't have technology, mate, so it's hard to
I'm talking about on your news and stuff like that. Like
that's true.
Get flooded with AFL.
Oh, and if he did,
I haven't seen anything.
If he did what they say he did, then you have to cop your punishment. That's just how nature works.
That's right. So I'm thinking
you play stupid games.
That just adds on to the whole Zeeble stuff, because it might not be like with Thomas not there, and that's where when we get into that, like Drury and other rookies that are potential might get opportunities because Thomas might not be there might be a week, might be 6 weeks, whatever, and stuff like that. But so I just think
it
that
definitely opens up the door for some important rookies. So I look forward to that chat.
Yeah, it's a risky door. Twofold with Zeeble. Number one is I told Chris he'd go under 90, so that's definitely one reason you should consider not picking him. The other one is as well 2 years ago. So when we think about North Melbourne, the amount of turnovers they had and the amount that Zeeble would just get ball, because he'd get it, he'd kick it to someone else, they'd kick it to the opposition, and then the opposition would kick it back into North
someone else with Aaron Hall, but yes.
Yeah. So, but then it would just come back in and he goes, thank you very much. I'll have this ball. I'll kick it to someone else. And then they're like, oh, let's try to take it on. And then they butcher it and then it comes back in. And it was just this cycle.
I see you played knifey spoony before.
Pretty much.
Outside of Zeeble, guys, any other
the obvious one, the other one, because I think he's in 10% at the moment, it's Ben Cunnington. And there's a lot of talk about him at F4 for people too.
Too expensive for me.
Yeah. Look, I think that he actually might go all right, but awkward price. Yeah, awkward price. There's already enough, right? Like you only have to pay $80K more to get some of the top forwards in the game. Like,
agreed.
I think the thought is with people, can he go 100 again? Like, if he's playing in that midfield, why can't he go 100? And then
he also said he expects to spend time forward.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. There's now, with his as great as he is, I think they've actually got options now. You know, we've talked about LDU.
Their midfield's stacked.
They've got so many midfielders, and that's not before we get into those young midfielders that we will, but just even senior midfielders, they've got them. So I think Cunnington definitely gets time in there, but they don't need him to be the player, and he's coming back from serious injuries.
Yeah, I think he kind of tops out below 90, to be honest. But that's just me. It's more the price that I kind of just get turned off at. And again, there's other options that are cheaper, or again, just go for one of those other 4 premiums that are standing out for not much more.
Yeah.
Go and get yourself a Taranto or a Rosie, and that's way better.
Or a Darcy Cameron for 40K.
Yeah, or go save yourself some money and go somewhere else. And the forward line is probably not the place. If there was any place that you could pick a $400,000 player, I would love a Sisley to be in my defense this year, because that'd be amazing from last year, as in price wise. There's just not much around.
Like a 450K player that you're like, man, this guy could be 100 and whatever. Yeah. There is a 350K guy that could be 100 and whatever. I don't know if you heard of him, Jack Zeeble.
All right, so moving on.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into these rookies, and there's a lot. I'm just going to name. I'll group the first 2 because the 2 absolute high premiums in Harry Sheezel and George Wardlaw. 198K forward is Sheezel, and Wardlaw 193 midfielder. Pick 3 and 4 boys.
Pass and pass. Wardlaw, if he was a pure mid, I could probably be tempted, but I don't think he will be, especially with the amount of depth they have. And Sheezel, again, is that forward. He's not going to play midfield. He was that dynamic forward sort of mid-type. I think they play him as a forward, maybe even a small forward or something to get him some games, but you generally don't score well enough in that role. And he's going to take a little bit of time as well. So Sheezel did have, I think it was kind of like Rockcliffe numbers, huge Supercoach scores and ratings and all the rest of it for some of these games. But I think it's just a pass and a pass, especially at that price.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a wait and see on both of them, unfortunately. But mostly because of opportunity. Like, I just don't see that. The big thing about these big, high end mid or mid forward types when they roll through is, are they rolling into a midfield where they're going to be able to get some good time in there? We've seen that the last few years. I mean, even I had the reservations for Ashcroft this year, but now it looks like he's going to get like 50% CBAs and be a great selection. I can't see that for these guys. And for that reason, unless they're playing like a Walsh type wing where they're actually going to get a lot of time there and play 85% time on ground, because you're an absolute machine. And you rarely see that. It's just, the expensive rooks like that, nah, not for me.
Sheezel's 16% at the moment.
Oh, that's horrible.
Wow.
Keep a league, I'm keen. I think he'll, again, keep that DPP.
So we move on to the also very expensive at 192, and that was Josh Gota, who's in 24% at the moment. Now, I've been really big on him because I love the fact that he can kick left and right foot, really good composed, and I was confident that he would have one of those halfback roles, especially with everything going on with Thomas. Doesn't seem to be the case with the reports coming out in pre-season and that. Like, I think he's been in a bit of the B team in their match sims and stuff like that. So he had somebody who was locked in my side has come out of my side. What are your thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I've actually I've gone completely cold on him, but I do have a spot for him if he does turn around and go, yeah, okay, I'm actually going to be in here. The problem is obviously at his price, if he doesn't start, then you can't really get him at any time. Like, there's no way that you're going to downgrade to 192K defender mid. So, he's in there. If Caulfield, if he gets up and Caulfield doesn't, I'll be going Caulfield down to Gota. That's really where I sit with it at the moment. There's a chance though, if Taron Thomas misses 6 weeks, you could get someone like a Gota in there, but I actually think that Drury might be slightly ahead of him in that specific role. And I think in the match sim, Drew was actually playing with the probables, not the possibles. And so therefore you're like, okay, well, the only way that I see Gota then is potentially more time on the wing rather than the half back. And he actually has spent some time up on the wing. But again, they just have so many mids. Where does that time come from? Is there an opportunity? I can't say holistically at this point that, Gota's going to be playing round one, especially on a wing with a stacked midfield. Yeah, it's so again for now.
Once Zeeble came in too, Zeeble in, that's another person in that defensive line. So Zeeble goes back there and he's out for me.
There's also Jackson Archer, which is slightly more expensive. I think it's 210K. I think he probably plays in that back line before say a Gota. Now, I think he's more in tune to say be a lockdown small He's not going to be necessarily a rebounding defender or anything like that. But that's one way you could release, say, a Luke McDonald up the field if that's the way they wanted to go. You could play Jackson Archer out of that pocket, and he could be your real lockdown guy, hard at it, inside bull for in defense. But that's the only way that I can see that happening.
One thing you know about Archer as well, though, is he's very accurate at the target.
Well, boom.
So and that links in with Blake Drury, the 102k mid forward, and that because he has definitely gone past him by all reports there. So he's the one that's come into my side, and it seems to come into a lot of sides. I think he's now 31%. So most of the Supercoach community has jumped on that. So there's still quite a few of Goda, and I think would not surprise whichever one of the two are picked. That'll probably be around that 50% mark. Especially if it's Jury at 102k. If he's there round one, everyone should be owning him then.
Yeah, and the difference is at 102k, I can put him on my bench, and if he ends up being a sub, it doesn't impact you as much. If Goda becomes a sub, you're losing cash. You're actually neck losing. So he needs to be coming out of the gates firing, and I'm just not sure that that's all going to be available to him from the get-go.
I read somewhere Drury was compared to Caleb Daniel as well.
Yep.
So during this preseason, so that kind of just, that type of player probably provides them something different. And especially when you have an aging Aaron Hall, it's like, okay, well, yes, Aaron Hall, you can do a job. Or we have this young guy who's very mobile, really accurate kick. It's like maybe we give him a go to show supporters that we're actually kind of trying to develop some youth and move forward rather than get this guy who's been, valuable and can take it on. But I don't think Aaron Hall's that irreplaceable, boys. So I think they might actually look to the future at some point.
Exactly. Like a lot of people are like, it's Clark, I really want the kids and stuff like that. But when he first got to Hawthorn, he had all the faith in the kids. That there's, Buddy, Giraffe, Cyril, Hodgie, Mitchell weren't that old. It was a young team that they brought through. And I think that's where, you're starting off at ground zero. So you're going to give some of these young fellas an opportunity because you're trying to build long-term success here.
Hopefully not opportunity with the kickouts that Jack Zeebel's going to be dominating, right?
Yeah. Before we get into the main one, I'm just going to touch on Charlie Comden. Comden at 123k forward. I know there's been a bit of chat in our group chats about that. Chris, do you want to expand on anything on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's been playing key forward. Actually, busted his nose at training recently, but apparently he's been absolutely killing it. So he, as far as we do have a bit of an inside track, and I won't mention names or anything like that, but as far as we've been told, he's under the impression that he's in their best 22 and looking to line up round one. So the only thing is, from a Supercoach perspective, is of course key forwards. So you just take it with a grain of salt, of course, but 123k, if there's no one else, you got to throw him in, right? So
is there no one else?
Yep.
Is there no one else?
Could be a sub out risk though. Obviously, Charlie Comben, tall guy. He's also can pinch in the ruck. What does that ruck system look like? Are they going to be going with just Todd and then Charlie Comben? Is that backup, or are they going to have the specific two rucks? Are they going to run like a Jacob Edwards through or something similar?
Well, Cherry was the one last year.
Or Cherry, yep.
Don't forget Coleman Jones. He's everyone's man.
Well, I think they've been playing three rucks in the team at times in the match sim. So it'll be interesting to see how they actually turn around with that.
And Goldie, big unknown as well, got the ruck gig again halfway through and then kept it. It's going to be really interesting to see how Clarko uses that ruck setup this year.
He Thanos the shit out of that ruck line and went, I'll do this myself.
All right, let's get on to the number one rookie. 50% of teams, 158k. Will Phillips, do you have him at M8 or M9? That's the only decision because he's in everyone's team.
I have him at M8 at the moment, but I've flirted with him at M9, and the reason is, there was a few reports this week and late last week that he was just absolutely burning up the track and killing it inside, and I was a little bit worried that he could potentially be that 23rd guy that they want to have as a sub, but no, I don't think so now. I think that he's going to be a midfielder, probably from the bench. I don't think he's in their best three, but I think that he's probably maybe fourth or fifth rotations. And that's enough at his price to be an absolute lock in most people's teams. I think he probably averaged somewhere between 70 to 80. So it's not like a huge out there prediction, but it's definitely going to be a good on-field option. And most weeks he should be fairly level with his scoring pattern. So I'm definitely going to be having him in my team. Just depends on where it's on field or at M8, like I said.
I think it's on field. The only issue is that midfield is quite thin, realistically speaking. Outside of Johnson, there's, unless you're playing a Sin or a Jinbi or someone like that in that midfield mix, it's generally quite thin at the moment. I'm waiting for someone to stand up through that midfield, and the lack of talk is concerning. So I don't mind him there. I have had the issue is if I have Hewitt, then you're going, well, Hewitt's on the bench, and you don't really want Hewitt on field for West Coast. So I think it has to be Phillips on field. And again, this is someone who I heard early things about. Said to everyone he's going to be the biggest lock as far as rookies for this season, and so far the talk has only increased since then. So I stand by my original comments 2 months ago.
Yeah, I don't like the fact of having. I've tried it with the 160k guy in Phillips and then the 150k guy in Hewitt sitting on my bench, and then the problem is if one of them is actually scoring well, how do you then get them on to your field? Because that means if you've got both of them on your bench, that means
you have to start with a loop in midfield.
You've got Ashcroft at M8 then of that. So, and I think we're all backing Ashcroft to be, a really good scorer and that. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to loop around Phillips and Hewitt on any given week. But by the way, they're sort of named in the sides and stuff like that, I'm probably going to stuff that one up every week. I'll probably get the wrong one on field.
Yeah.
But at least it gives an option for one of them to be on field. Where
the other one,
the only way, Ashcroft wouldn't be M8 is if you had Jinbi in your midfield mix. That's the only way. Otherwise, Ashcroft, would be in that scenario.
The other one that's putting some questions up in midfield at the moment is Jack Bytel, who's the same price pretty much as Will Phillips. So whether or not and the problem with him is again sub risk. So he was a sub. He's been a sub in past, and he's never really hit the ground running. But by all reports, he had an absolutely fantastic back end of the year in the VFL, and he's had a great preseason. So he could be. Again, new coach. He could be under different consideration. He could get some more mid-time. He could be in their best 22. It's just something that I've got to wait and see on to be able to evaluate that. But is he better than Phillips? Well, no way. No way. Not at this stage of the preseason. So yeah, definitely locking in Phillips on field for me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so that's the North Melbourne rookies.
There's one more.
Oh, one more?
A rookie also breakout. Bergman, defender, 117k, could break out from a -1 average and get into the positives.
Well, you'd think it's all uphill from here. You'd think.
Yeah, I mean they've got a lot of options that they can throw down there in defense. I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see how they are going to work this from a Clarko perspective. I expect a lot of list change and turnover at the end of this year. I mean, they got guys like Bailey Scott. Where's his role?
He's
doing
draft Smokey. He was awesome for me last year. Really rewarded it. But
why would you bring Scott up into delistings?
What?
Well, no, I just think what's his role at the club?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the hard thing because I love owning him last year was great in draft because it was a guy I picked up on the waivers. Yeah, and he scored really well. And I think he's one if for whatever reason, like Hall, if Thomas doesn't line up, if Hall's gone down injured, and McDonald's shored up on that wing, he can go back down that back line and be handy there. But I feel like he's a little bit of a Mr. Fix-It. He can sort of fit in and play of different roles and stuff. So
yeah, he probably comes in off the bench and plays.
He's the one that, again, I'm waiting on the waivers. If there's mass injuries at North, I'm going to be trying to pick him up straight away because he can fix a hole down there.
I don't think he's a defender in general. I know he is and was last year, but generally he was, part bit midfield, part bit wing, part bit forward. So I agree with the fix-it scenario, but I don't think he's a defender. And
I think he's got to settle on a wing. He's got to settle on a wing.
So do I.
Yeah, but he goes and fixes that hole if they get a hole down there. If Zeeble, let's say, went down or whatever, they go, okay, Bailey Scott, you're going down there for 6 weeks or whatever it is.
If Zeeble goes down, they use one of the other 5 guys they have in defence at the moment.
But they'll use it depends on how long because they might not want to. Let's just say Luke McDonald's set on the wing. They might not upset that. They'll go, okay, Bailey Scott, you're going to go fix this hole for 4 weeks. Oh, okay, now we've got another injury here. Bailey Scott, you're going to go fix that hole. And that I think that's what he is. He is the fixer of North Melbourne because he can just play anywhere, but he doesn't really have a set position. So he's good to own in draft if he's fixing that role for a certain amount of time.
Yep.
But I'm not picking.
McDonald
he's a waiver
scenario,
guy.
How many games until Jaden Stevenson retires or gets delisted?
Gets delisted. That's a great question. Did I have Stephenson on here? No, the other two I had on there was I had Darcy Tucker, the change of clubs for opportunity, likely to play wing. So a good depth option there. And the other one I had was Aiden Core, just because we talked about that idea that it could be him and not Zeeble, but it's most likely to be Zeeble. But we know Core has had that patch before where he can be that sort of intercept guy and able to rack them up.
Does
Stevenson's waiting for the end of the year. Sorry? Stevenson wants to go on holiday with Pollock.
I don't know if that's a hard thing. I don't know about Liam Shields.
So he was playing in the B team in the match sim, but that could be just to get a hard body into the midfield. I don't know. He's a Clarko boy, right?
They got guys like Hugh Greenwood too. Like remember, how deep do they go? Like we're talking Cunnington, Shields, Greenwood,
Daniel Howe. What's he doing? Like I don't.
And they've already brought in. You think they've brought in Tucker and Lowe to be best 22. They're not leaving Freo to sit in the reserves there. Aiden Bonner, is another guy that has come across. He's not probably getting a look in that. Jaden, we've talked about Stephenson just then, like how quickly he gets kind of booted. But they've got a lot of guys that could be in that best 22, but it's kind of a mix of 15th to 30 on the list. There's 15 guys there fitting into like 7 positions.
Yeah.
No, we're also doing what Carlton did and just trying to raid some talent from other teams and hope they come good.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that there'll be a lot of list turnover at the end of this year. I think that Clarko's first year is going to be a bit of finding out what he's got. And part of this is, Jack, go behind the ball. We know what you can provide for us. You're only going to be here 2 years anyway. I mean, what's he going to do, Interesting at North. Interesting. So look forward to it. And I look forward to seeing them in match sim for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good one. I think they're playing Richmond in one of their that first little hit out. So I've had a couple of people ask me, am I going to go down to that? So I probably will go and check that out. So down at Arden Street. So that'll be a really interesting game.
Take some notes.
Yeah, might take a few notes.
Love it. All right, guys. I think that pretty much wraps us up for North, doesn't it?
It sure
does. Might have even beaten the D's as far as timeline. So look, it's
they're actually probably more relevant than Melbourne.
Oh, they
are
definitely
because of the rookies. Yeah,
exactly. A lot of ins and outs, a lot of rookies and changes as well. I might be getting to the Geelong and Brisbane game up here if I get allowed. So I believe I've got a ticket. I just depends on baby and baby, basically 2 babies. Chris, half of what you have.
Exactly right. I won't be going, just so you know.
Full form.
Awesome. All right, guys.
That's it from us. All the good teams are coming up. Port Adelaide, Richmond, Sydney, Western Bulldogs. Stay tuned for sure.
Thanks, guys.
That's it from us. All right. Bye.